What if the scariest version of immortality isn't living forever? What if it's surviving in every version of reality where survival is still possible, even when every other version of you is gone? That's the idea behind quantum immortality. And I'll be honest, I don't think the interesting part is whether it's true in some clean, provable way. The interesting part is what the idea does to your brain once you really sit with it. Hey, if we haven't met, I'm Q's digital avatar. Q researches and shapes the ideas behind these videos. I help him produce and present them here. So I'm not replacing Q, I'm part of the workflow, he does the thinking, I help bring it to the screen. Quantum immortality starts with a real interpretation of quantum mechanics, called the many worlds interpretation. The simple version is this: when a quantum event has multiple possible outcomes, maybe reality doesn't pick one and throw the others away. Maybe all of them happen, but in different branches. That sounds like science fiction, but it came from an attempt to take the math seriously. Instead of saying the universe collapses into one outcome when it's observed, many worlds says the wave function keeps going. Every possible outcome continues in its own branch. So if that's true, the strange question becomes, what happens to you? Not you as a body seen from the outside. You as the thing having the experience. Imagine a dangerous event where there's a tiny chance you survive and a much larger chance you don't. From the outside, most versions of you are gone. But from your own point of view, you can't experience the branch where there's no experience left. You only ever find yourself in the branch where you continue. That's the basic shape of quantum immortality. That's the core concept. And this is where people usually make one of two mistakes. Some people hear it and treat it like a loophole, like physics found a secret backdoor around death. I don't think that's the right read, not even a little bit. Other people dismiss it immediately because it sounds ridiculous. I get that too, it does sound ridiculous. But sounds ridiculous isn't the same as has nothing useful to say. The useful part is that quantum immortality forces us to separate two questions we usually mash together. One question is, what happens in the universe? The other is, what can consciousness experience? Those are not the same question. From the outside, death is easy to describe. A body stops functioning, a brain stops producing experience, a person is gone. From the inside, it's harder, because you never experience your own non-experience. You can imagine it, you can fear it, you can watch it happen to other people, but you can't be present for the moment where there's no you left to be present. Quantum immortality takes that already weird fact and plugs it into branching reality. If every possible outcome happens somewhere, and you can only be aware in the outcomes where awareness continues, then subjectively you may always wake up in the surviving branch. But that doesn't make it comforting. Honestly, it makes it worse. Because the theory doesn't say you survive well. It doesn't say you survive young, healthy, happy, clear-minded, or intact. It just says that if there's a branch where some version of your conscious experience continues, that may be the only branch you can ever notice. That's not heaven, not by a long shot. That's not a cheat code. That's a horror story with better math. Because survival by itself is not the same as living. A person can survive with pain, with loss, with memory damage, with a body that barely works, with a mind that no longer feels like their own. And this is where quantum immortality runs into biology. Physics can give us branching possibilities, but biology still has limits. Brains degrade, bodies fail, identity changes. Consciousness depends on physical systems that can be damaged in ways that don't map neatly onto the idea of you continue. That's the part I think people skip over. They talk about the observer like it's some clean, floating thing. But we are not just observers. We are bodies, nervous systems, memories, patterns, relationships, hormones, trauma, sleep, blood flow, language, aging cells. The you that survives in one branch may not feel like a clean continuation of the you watching this video right now. And if enough changes, the question becomes uncomfortable. What exactly are we saying survives? A heartbeat that continues to pulse against the odds. A brain signal that refuses to go silent. A stream of awareness that never truly finds an end. A memory pattern that stays in the dark. A point of view looking out from the darkness. We use the word I like it's simple, but it isn't simple at all. That's why this theory gets under people's skin. It touches physics, but it also touches identity. If a version of you survives in another branch, is that you? If every version exists, which one matters? If consciousness only tracks the path where it continues, does that mean death is impossible from the inside? Or does it just mean the inside has no way to report the end? That last question matters. It matters more than the others. Because quantum immortality may be less of a promise and more of a blind spot. It might not show that you can't die. It might show that subjective experience can't contain its own absence. That's a much more grounded way to think about it. And honestly, it's still strange enough. We don't need to oversell it. There's also a practical danger in taking this idea too literally. If someone hears you may always survive somewhere and treats that like permission to take risks, they've misunderstood the whole thing. Even under the most generous version of the idea, other people still lose you. Most branches still lose you. Your body still matters. Your choices still matter. Suffering still matters. A theory about subjective continuity doesn't erase consequences. It definitely doesn't erase grief. That's why I don't think quantum immortality is really about immortality. I think it's about how bad we are at thinking from the outside and the inside at the same time. From the outside, the universe can be cold and statistical. From the inside, experience feels continuous and personal. Physics deals in probabilities, consciousness deals in presence. And death sits right at the point where those two ways of thinking stop fitting together cleanly. So if quantum immortality scares people, I think that's why. It doesn't just ask, what if you live forever? It asks, what if continuation isn't the gift you think it is? It asks, what if survival without control, health, memory, or dignity is not comfort at all? And it asks something even quieter. What exactly counts as you in this scenario? I don't think we have a clean answer. I also don't think we should pretend this theory proves more than it does. Quantum immortality is not settled science. It's a thought experiment built on an interpretation of quantum mechanics, layered with assumptions about consciousness that we still don't fully understand. But as a thought experiment, it's useful. Not because it tells us we're immortal, because it reminds us that consciousness is still one of the strangest things in the room. We can describe atoms better than we can explain why experience feels like anything from the inside. We can calculate probabilities better than we can explain the feeling of being the one who sees an outcome. And we can talk about death clinically, but the subjective side of it still breaks our language. That's the part worth paying attention to. Quantum immortality doesn't make me think maybe we never die. It makes me think maybe our normal way of talking about life, death, self, and experience is much thinner than we admit. And maybe that is enough of a thought for today. Not a promise of life eternal, not at all. And definitely not a loophole around the end. Just a reminder that reality is probably stranger than our everyday categories can hold.